Well, I can see the attendance meters settled now, so we'll get started now. So, morning. My name is Pete Hall. I'm accompanied this morning by my colleague Joe, who you can see in the window there.
Morning, everyone.
I'm doing the presentation today. Joe is watching the chat window for questions, so feel free to post your questions in the chat. We'll reserve questions until the end today. I don't want to be answering. Well, I don't want the questions to slow down the show for everybody. So if you keep your questions to the end, we'll open the floor to questions then. We're recording the show today, the webinar, and we might use our video today for a video on our website. But we won't be keeping the questions, so don't worry that we're going to put your questions up on the website. We'll just be keeping the content of the presentation, just a video of that to put on our website. So I think that's all the formalities. We'll get on with the presentation. So today's webinar is about CE and UKCA marking. I'm Pete Hall. I'm a consultant here at Product Compliance Support, and our service offers compliance support on all sorts of things, not just CE and UKCA marking, all sorts of product legislation and product rules. That is our service. So it starts with identifying the rules that apply to a manufacturer, and then sometimes we get involved in doing assessments of products to show that they comply with the rules, and compiling technical documentation, writing instructions, doing declarations of conformity. Those are all parts of our service. So we've been going for about 4 years and doing that, but we're all from a background where we did the same job really at another company before. We have a sister company called Authorised Rep Compliance, and that focuses on representing products in the EU and UK internal markets. So we represent the safety and compliance of products in case the authorities have questions about them for manufacturers who are outside the UK. We give UK representation, and those are outside the EU, including UK manufacturers. We offer EU representation through our office in Ireland. So that is Authorised Rep Compliance. Today is compliance support, so I've got my product compliance support hat on today. Right, let's get on with the show. So what is CE and UKCA marking? So it's a European mark which is to show is applied by manufacturers to products to show that those products, or in the opinion of the manufacturer, comply with European legislation about them and about certain requirements for the EU market. It's mostly about self-declaration by manufacturers, but sometimes there's certification by external bodies, but not in any of the products or areas that we're going to discuss today. So that's for higher risk products. There are about 30, in fact, I think there are now 30 directives and regulations in the EU that require CE and UKCA marking, and most of those also require, most of those are active in the UK, for which there's also UKCA marking. There's an extra voluntary scheme implemented by the UK to allow the UK market and UK rules to deviate from EU rules. They haven't actually deviated very much, and so in most cases the CE mark is applicable in the UK. It's allowable in the UK, and therefore the UKCA mark is voluntary for CE marked products. So all these pieces of legislation, they're all written on a common template, and they have lots of common themes to them, if you like. So at the heart of them, of each regulation or directive, are the essential requirements. So they're the rules about the product that say what level of safety or environmental protection or compatibility the product needs to be allowed to be placed on the EU market. And so they're about the design and manufacture of the product to be safe, environmentally compliant, or compatible, the main themes. They require lots of information. So they require user information in markings and instructions, and they require manufacturer information that the manufacturer keeps to prove that the product complies with the regulations and directives. Standards are woven into the CE and UKCA marking system, and they're in there to provide guidance on what the essential requirements mean for products, and usually to provide the recommended way for a product to meet the essential requirements of a particular directive or regulation. And the ones that are approved by the EU as providing that guidance are called harmonised standards, and they provide a thing called presumption of conformity, which means if you conform to the standard, you can assume that you have met the essential requirements. So they all have also a declaration of conformity, and that is a statement by the manufacturer that the product complies, and it has to be signed by an individual on behalf of the manufacturer. And what that does is it links a person with a statement that the product complies, and then if there's any argument, the manufacturer then can't pretend that that they didn't think the product complied or they hadn't intended the product for the EU market. Technical documentation is the evidence of compliance with the regulations, and that records how the product has been made to comply with them. And then, of course, there's the logos, the CE logo, and then the UKCA logo for the UK only, or for Great Britain only. It's not the CE logo is still required in Northern Ireland, because Northern Ireland is still in the single European market. So what are the steps you need to follow if you've got a product and you want to make it comply with CE and UKCA marking? So normally most products can be self-certified, and so the first step is to decide which legislation applies, to look for the standards, to check the product complies with the requirements in the legislation and standards, to make sure if there are any areas that don't comply, to put those right before the product's placed on the market, to compile this technical documentation, which consists of the assessment, the CE marking assessment, and information about the product, and information about how products are always made to comply, so quality measures. To put the logo on the product, to prepare a declaration of conformity. So that allows you to sell one product, and then you've got to make sure that you make all the products comply. So if you if you mass produce them, you've got to have quality measures that make sure that you don't the product doesn't go out of conformity with any of the essential requirements. So all the legislation, as I say, has a similar format. So there's a bit called the preamble, the scope, the definitions, the essential requirements. There are obligations for all the operators in the supply chain, all economic operators. There are marking obligations and information obligations. There are conformity assessment procedures, so that is whether it's self-assessment or whether it's certification. And then there are entry into force arrangements, so that is when it comes into force, which bits of the directive or regulation apply from which dates. And then there are annexes which have information that isn't in the main body of the regulation. The main person who has obligations under CE marking legislation is the manufacturer. So it puts most of the onus on getting the product right on the manufacturer, wherever they are. So even if they're outside the EU expects manufacturers to meet the essential requirements and all the other requirements. But the manufacturer is the person who's named on the product. So if you own brand, if you get your products made overseas and then you import them into Europe, and put your brand on them, then you become the manufacturer. So you then take on all the responsibilities for making sure the product complies. And so all those obligations are, in short, they are meeting the essential requirements, compiling technical documentation, doing the certification steps, drawing up the declaration of conformity, putting the CE or UKCA mark on, keeping technical documentation, and operating a quality regime that makes sure all your European products comply. That might involve sample testing. If you get reports of products that don't comply, you've got to look into them and do something about them. And in order to make the products traceable to you, you've got to mark certain information on them to make those products traceable and to allow you to trace the products that are wrong, and allow those people with wrong products to trace you. You've got to provide user information in the right language. And if you've got a dangerous product, you've got to inform the national authorities, so market surveillance authorities, and you've got to inform the safety gate. You've got to make a submission to the safety gate portal on the EU website. And then you have to cooperate with the authorities to get those to do something about the compliance of those products. So you've got to have traceability records for 10 years to that allow you to trace products back as far as that. You've got to, right, so standards we said, so those are the manufacturer's obligations. So standards are there, as I say, to support the directives as guidance. There's presumption of conformity, and that's explained in each harmonised standard. Explains how it presumes you can presume conformity, which requirements it covers of a directive or legislation in a particular part of it. But sometimes those standards can be wrong. So there's also a thing called the Official Journal of the European Union, which is like the minute book of the European Union, that has notes. It has standards lists to say which standards are harmonised, and on that list there might be extra requirements for a standard if it's found to be not reflecting what the legislation says. So when you apply a standard, you've also got to check that harmonised standards list and see if there's anything extra you have to do. When you're looking for standards, there are good places to find the titles of them. Starting at the Harmonised Standards website, which has that those official journal standards lists on them. So that is has lists of only standards that are recommended for CE and UKCA marking or CE marking. The UK has equivalent lists of what are called designated standards. So that's the best place to start looking for a standard to help CE mark your product. And there's the address for it. You can look on the BSI website, but then you're swamped with 100,000 titles, and there might be, yes, if you're looking for a standard for mobile phones, for example, you won't be focusing on the CE marking standards. It'll be ones for all sorts of aspects to do with mobile phones will come up in a search on BSI. There are other websites for particular areas of standardization. The European government has its CENELEC and CEN websites. So when you're looking for standards, to do your CE marking, and they're always recommended, then, sorry about this, I should have put my do not disturb on. You should always try and use specific standards where possible, and not try and use ones that are too general. But when you're applying standards, you might find things in the standards that you can't comply with. So when that happens, you've got to remember that it's the essential requirements are the important part. They're the legal requirements. And if the standard isn't a good way for your product, you are free to deviate from the standard and do your assess risks and do your testing in different ways, as long as you still meet the essential requirements. Standards are only one way of meeting the essential requirements. The way we apply standards is we make checklists out of them. So here's one that I've done some time ago for hydraulic press, which is a type of machinery. And all we've done here is we've taken the rules from the standard, the ones about the product, because standards have all sorts of other stuff in, but you focus on the rules about the product, take the text out of the standard, paste it in this left-hand column, and then we have other columns here where you can make judgments as to whether your product complies with those rules. So there are pass, fail, not applicable, and question mark columns for things you're not sure of. And then if it's not obvious why it's there's a verdict in a particular column, you write a note in the right-hand column. And so that is the way we would do a CE marking assessment for a product usually, is to make a checklist and apply it. And you can see they're quite lengthy. There's one with 37 pages of requirements for a product. That's going to take a few hours to get through. And you can see that I've put on here that some things pass, there's a few things that are not applicable, and there's a few things that I wasn't sure about, and I've had to put notes in about them, and I would have had to come back to those and make a decision on them, maybe ask the manufacturer about that requirement and how they comply with it, and then or maybe have to do something about changing the product to comply. And so those checklists, they're part of the assessment, and they are the backbone of the technical file. So a technical file, or technical documentation as it's sometimes called, is always required under every piece of legislation, and it's got to describe the product. It's got to list the standards that are applied. It's got to have records of the assessment, so those are the checklists. It's got to have all sorts of information about the product in there, showing how it complies. Anything that's relevant to how it complies with some rules, that's really got to be in the technical file. So if parts lists, copies of user information, test reports if there are tests done, and then quality procedures, the declaration of conformity. So that's an important document as well. We have a checklist for helping us compile technical files, and it has on the left, it has all the things you might need in a technical file for a particular type of product, and then you can go through it, and we go through it and mark up whether that item is required for this particular product or whether it's not. And then we might sometimes write which, if we found a document that meets that requirement, we might put the title of it in that column. And then on the right there's a check as to whether you've got that enough information for that to meet that part of the file. So that's really at a glance view of how complete the technical file is on the right there. So we said all products need a declaration of conformity. So that's one of the other important parts. So this is a statement that the product complies, made by the manufacturer. And it, as we said, it links a person to the product and its compliance. And it's got to be a senior person who does that. The authorities, they want to be able to find a senior person to ask them the questions and, if necessary, prosecute them for not doing their job. But if you put a junior person on, they will just do their research into you and find out who should have done the job, who should have made the product comply. And they usually look something like this. With at the top, there's that information about the product, information about the manufacturer, information about the regulations that apply, the standards that have been applied, and information about the person who signed it. So that's a typical declaration of conformity on our template. We're now going to look at just I think three of the most common CE marking directives for our customers. So I hope some of these will be applicable to your products, and we have some information about them that's interesting to you. So the low voltage directive, that is about mains electrical products, and it applies to everything with an operating voltages within those limits. It really covers all mains appliances. There's a few exceptions to it. We haven't really got time to go through all the exclusions, but yeah, most mains equipment is covered, and it is about safety of persons and domestic animals and property. So this is about whether you can be electrocuted, you or domestic animals or farm animals can be electrocuted, or whether your house can be burned down in a fire, that sort of thing, by an electrical fault on equipment. So it's got all the usual elements of a CE marking legislation. So the declaration of conformity, technical file, the logos, and having to do a risk assessment. There's a few typical products. There's household, so it covers right the way through from household products through to commercial products and industrial products. They're all, if they're mains powered or they've got mains voltage, a connection at mains voltage, then they are within the scope of the directive. It's got standards, and they're in families, these standards. So there's a family of standards about household appliances with about 100 parts to it. It's got some general requirements and 100 or so different specific standards that adapt the general requirements to particular types of products. And then there's other families to do with IT equipment, test equipment, medical equipment, machinery, and all the different things that operate at mains voltage. So all the common ones, they have a family, and then each family has lots of different parts to it to do with different individual types of product in that family. The EMC Directive is another electrical product directive. So that is about protecting the electromagnetic spectrum, and what that means is it's about preventing interference on to broadcasts and to radio broadcasts, and interference of one piece of equipment with another piece of equipment. So it's only about functionality of equipment and protection of the spectrum. It's not about safety. So if there's a safety effect of electromagnetic effect, that would be covered by one of the safety directives, like the low voltage directive would cover if your equipment went haywire and electrocuted you. That would be due to lightning or some other piece of interference, electrical interference. It's only about functionality. So this is whether you get wiggly lines on your telly screen, noise on the radio, or whether you get things doing unusual, failing to operate properly. And it's the essential requirements say equipment's not to interfere with other equipment, and it's not to be susceptible to interference by other equipment. Those are the essential requirements. It's not about safety, and it covers most electrical apparatus. So apparatus is most equipment. It also covers fixed installations. So those are individual items of bespoke equipment, individual bespoke installations in a particular place. And really, it says if there's a risk of any interference, then the directive applies. If it's what they call EMC benign, which means it can't there's no kind of interference can interfere with it, and it doesn't generate any kind of interference that could interfere with anything else, or it can't generate any interference, then it's not covered and it doesn't need CE marking. So that would be things like a simple electric fire, or a toaster or something like that, a simple toaster. But anything more complicated than that is covered. So things that have particular risks, so they're particularly susceptible or they're particularly likely to cause interference, are things like microprocessors, transmitting apparatus, obviously, heating equipment, power switching that's done at high speed. So this is modulating the power to a device to make it operate at different speeds. So variable speed drives and proportional heating controls. Those are the big risks for emissions. So that is things that can interfere with other equipment. The big risks on immunity, which is things that can fail to work because of electrical noise. So these are the low power circuits like thermocouples, load cells, and cheap security devices, else displays and that sort of thing. So that's the EMC directive. It's quite a common one, covers most electrical equipment. And I think the final one today is the RoHS Directive. So that is about harmful substances that are in electrical apparatus, and setting limits and trying to stamp out the use of harmful substances in electrical apparatus. And it covers all electrical equipment unless it's excluded. But the reason why there are lots of groups is because there are restrictions, certain restrictions and certain concessions apply to different groups of products. But at the end of the list, there's that one, number 11, that was added a few years ago, and that is all electrical equipment that's not covered by any other category. So it effectively applies to all equipment now. So the main requirements of the RoHS Directive, so there are these restricted substances, there's only 10 of them. So it's not too difficult to go through, to do a test for them. And their laboratories are all set up to do tests. Most of them are heavy metals. Some of them are phthalates, which are plasticizers, and I think some of them are fire retardants. So there are limits on the concentration, which are in sort of 0.1% to 0.001% kind of limits. So those are the safe limits on those substances in any material in your product. So it can apply to something that might seem as trivial as a coat of plating. So if you've got cadmium plating as one of your plating steps in one of your components, your product then doesn't comply. So the way to comply is to go and buy components for your electrical apparatus that the manufacturer has made sure meet RoHS, and they've made a declaration of conformity about them. For most people. And then if you are actually buying products or making products, you can go through and do testing. It has exemptions for certain limits in the certain groups, but these are all time limited because they don't want exemptions to carry on forever. The aim is to stamp out these harmful substances. There is a mechanism for adding more substances. And so you have to do an assessment of whether you've got harmful substances. You've got to compile a technical file. You've got to put the CE mark, or you can't put the CE mark on your product until you've made sure you comply. One way is to get your supplier to issue a declaration of conformity and use that as the evidence that that component complies, but you can take it to a test house. And there's a standard EN 63000 that describes how to do all of this. And with all the, as with all the others, if there's a non-compliance, you may have to report it to the authorities and do something about it. So that's we're coming to the end of the presentation now. There is the blue guide is a general guide to CE marking. You can look it up online or get it from that address below there. And it's got it's the Bible on CE marking questions. That's what we use to answer most CE marking questions. There's also the standards lists online from that we talked about. You can buy standards. Is commission guidance in guidance documents on each piece of legislation from the European Commission, and the UK government has guides on all the regulations as well, which really mostly reflects the EU guidance, but isn't in as much detail. You're still expected in the UK to go to look at EU guidance to get the fine detailed guidance. And we've got a website, and lots of other people have websites about CE marking. So that's the end of the slideshow.